I see a lot of familiar faces here. That's cool. The last webinar where we did a month ago, I didn't see that many people that I know, but it's cool. Yeah. So that's why I'll keep it short on my side. I'm Laurent, one of the co-founders of Holycode. Studied business and economics, worked at Deal, co-founded Movu, successfully exited it to Baloise. Then was the CEO of Bexio for almost 2 years. Helped them to become profitable, do a technological turnaround. Co-founded Holycode in 2014. Always did that as a side job, side hustle. Since last summer, I'm here full-time. Holycode is a software development company where we help startups get from idea to IPO with as little technical mistakes and as little resources as possible. So this is where we can help you on any front. And that's also why we're co-hosting this webinar series, because there's so many learnings that you can get on the early stage, but then also later in the later stage. Not just on the technological front, but also on all the other areas that are super important. And that's why Joel is also here, because he's an expert on lots of them. Joel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you very much for also the invitation to you both, Regula and Laura, for being here today. Yeah, as you heard, my name is Joel Kapt. I'm the CEO and founder of Picora. Picora is a startup enablement platform. That means we help companies to scale successfully through different stages of growth. The specialty about us is that we do that a little bit differently. So that means we do not do any kind of consulting or coaching. We developed a new methodology. We call that startup enablement, which is a combination between the necessary roadmaps and templates you need, e-learning, and actually the hands-on implementation together with the clients. I have a background since ever in startups. That means I know zero about corporates, but a little bit about startups. My startup journey started back at university. I had my first 2 companies in HR tech back then. Worked a little bit in Silicon Valley for a Swiss American VC fund, and then came back to Switzerland in 2016, joined the then a young startup called Beekeeper in B2B SaaS, internal communications, as we were around 30 people, with which then I had the pleasure to scale from 30 to over 200 people and 20 million in ARR. And as you can imagine, there are definitely a few things that we did right on that journey, but there are also plenty of things that we did wrong. And it's especially these costly mistakes that really hold startups back, that lead to the startups failing. So I think when you build a company, it's rather more about avoiding all those costly mistakes, other than finding this special silver bullet stories we sometimes hear from Silicon Valley. And Picora is exactly about that, so that we come in and really help founders understand in what kind of stage are they, what's the exact next steps they have ahead of them, and how to make sure that they do overcome those challenges correctly from the very beginning without making those mistakes. And I think the topic we talk about today, from 0 to hero, 0 to 1 million, fits exactly many of those different stages, where I'm happy to share 1 or 2 things about.
Fantastic. I also think, Joel, that just as a side note, what they do also works very well for later stage companies. So as an example, Holycode, we are now 400 employees, but we still worked through the whole system of Picora this year. So yeah, I know firsthand now how valuable it is, and that's why we wanted to really have you here on this episode. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. I'd like to kick it off with this first question. So I mean, you both have obviously seen companies at that stage in a transformation, and this is a crucial point in the whole startup journey. And what are the common challenges that startups face in general when they are transitioning from the 0 revenue prototype to into this 1 million ARR phase, so to say?
Should I take that, Laurent, first?
If you want to go first.
Okay. So maybe an introductory thought to share about that, right? The span of 0 to 1 million in a startup journey is quite big, and it's quite different. Generally speaking, we differentiate between 3 different stages when a startup actually goes through that path. There's the product market fit phase, the very first stage. This is all about building your first prototype, building your MVP, finding your first customer, validating product market fit qualitatively or quantitatively. So that's the first and foremost most important goal when you start as a company. It's not about winning new clients or generating revenue. It's really about finding product market fit with your early customers, right? And that comes with its entire own set of challenges where I think Laura can share a lot about it, also from the technical aspect. Now, the second stage then is the go-to-market stage. Some people also call that the proof of concept stage. So this is really when we actually have proven product market fit. We know we have certain value that we can offer in the market and people really want to buy it. Now it's about understanding the market better and where do we really want to drill down with our focus and start building a stronghold in the market, right? So this is then where we really need to start investing into marketing, into sales, into operations, into building the entire structure. A lot of things then still happen manually, meaning it's founder-led sales, founder-led marketing. First, people come in and support you. Depending on the industry, this phase can stop a little bit before $1 million, but it can also go way above $1 million, right? Especially if you talk hardware companies. But that's the go-to-market stage. And this stage ends at the point where I really have developed a market fundamentally, developed a stronghold, which I know, okay, this is my market. I could build a brand in this market. And the next stage would be the scaling and expansion stage, meaning expanding either into other ideal customer profiles, other verticals, or other regions. And that again comes with another set of different challenges, which I think is a little bit later stage and we maybe do not address too much. So I think the first two stages is of focus for today. And with that, I play the ball back to you, Laura, maybe tackling the first stage and the challenges there a little bit more specifically.
Sure, cool. Yeah, you're a book of wisdom. Like if I would have started, never would have had this structure from the first moment. But I fully agree on everything you just said, and I think it's super important to be aware that you cannot do all of these things at once. You have to really make sure that you do this in a phased approach, and you really consider having product market fit and addressing one problem after the other. So have a lot of focus because you ask Regula for the challenges or the problems. And I see one of the problems is you're drowning. You're drowning in too many things. You have to do too many ideas. You can test out left and right, and then you're not doing anything right at the end, right? And I think there's I don't know how to say it in English, but there's a quote from an investor that says startups never die of starvation. They die of inability to digest everything, basically, right? So, and I think that's especially in the early phase where you don't have a lot of people on the team. You need to take care of almost everything by yourself. Focus, try to do one thing right, move on to the next. Always try to make sure that what you're taking care of really feeds into this product market fit, or afterwards into being able to have the right go-to-market approach and understanding your market better. Don't do 5 things at the same time, and never spend too much money on any individual thing before you've proven that it's working, right? That can be your MVP technologically, that can be Google Ads on your scaling, that can be, I don't know. I've had that, people telling me, yeah, now I spent 20,000 on a newspaper ad and they told me it will be great, and I had 0 return and all my money is gone now. So never do these sort of things, because that's going to drain you quite quickly. And I think that all of these things in one way or another are happening to every startup. You might be protecting yourself in one area, but in the next one, you might be doing a lightheaded decision or investing too much time or too little. So I think focus and not spending too much money on each part, and really making sure you tick the boxes along the way. That's I think the most important thing to do in this early stage.
Joel, I'm curious, is there like at some point things need to change? And I guess it's when you go to market, that's when things need to change, when you need to start using different tools, when you need to think differently, set up things differently. Is there like this, do you realize that, or how do you advise your startup customers about this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's very much like that, right? Because if we take a look at the playbook, the way I described it before, it's very clear what those different phases are and what you should be doing in those different phases. And we're going to get back to those details about the go-to-market stage just in a bit. But in reality, it's a little bit more like what Laura also described. You're totally in the hustle. Sometimes you don't even realize when you actually enter the next stage, or you don't know when is the right timing to actually start investing into that. And then what happens is two things that we often see. So either you're developing a product, especially when you're like deep in the tech sector, that is so good that the market pulls so much that you actually, with your revenue, you get very, very, very far. Sometimes you even enter Series A, Series B, and then you actually never had to invest into building the right fundamentals in the go-to-market stage that should have happened. So that means sometimes companies come to us and they're either Series A or sometimes even Series B stage, but they're lacking all the fundamentals that they should have built in the go-to-market stage because the market pulled so much. Then market changes a little bit. Maybe the music stops running for a while, right? And then they realize, oh shit, now we really need to invest into building those fundamentals. The second thing is companies do not have such a great product or just value they can offer at this point, and they don't even get that far. So they really need to build those fundamentals so they can focus on the market and also build out that value further. Maybe also because it's something complex which they sell, where the market cannot that easily pull, right? Now, to be specific with you now, entering the go-to-market stage, what should happen there, right? The most common mistake we see is companies getting into go-to-market stage, meaning they want to grow. Growth then mostly comes with adding more money and more people, right? So then they just start investing more money, more people, and they just continue repeating the same processes and applying the same systems and frameworks more often with more people and more money. But it's basically still the early manual operating system that they built in the product market fit stage. Now, what happens is they try to grow that part, not even scale. I'm just talking about growing, and things start breaking. New salespeople are not successful because they cannot show the same results like the founders did because there's no professional playbook installed. Because there's no playbook installed, there's also no operations in part of like a CRM and a well-defined sales process, so the other could basically repeat that process, right? Same story for the marketing. So this all starts breaking apart and doesn't really work. So what we usually say, very specifically when you enter the go-to-market stage, is first of all, understand your ideal customer profile. So after trying various different customers with your new product to validate it, now it's the time to single down or 2 to 3 ideal customer profiles where you really want to drill down into. Why is this important? Well, because if you try to be the amazing product for the entire market, you end up being nothing to no one, right? So pick 2 to 3 ideal customer profiles. This is where you develop a stronghold. In line with the ideal customer profile, you also know what is the average deal size that this ideal customer profile will bring me. Are we somewhere selling below $2,000? Are we between 2,000 and 10K? Are we between 10 to 50K or above? Knowing this is absolutely crucial to build your acquisition engine because every of these deal size span comes with a complete different go-to-market model that you need to build behind. Right? So am I a product-led growth go-to-market model somewhere between 0 to 10K, maybe like 0 to 2K and then 2 to 10K, a hybrid motion, meaning product-led, free trial, freemium, together with a low-touch sales team? Am I between 10 and 50K? That means I'm going to have a simple field sales structure, a BDRA structure, very common. Or am I somewhere in the direction of above 50K, 100 or 100 plus? Then it's clearly in the ABM, ABS, account-based marketing, account-based sales structure. Knowing this is absolutely crucial before you invest anything into growth. Because if I don't know that, I don't know how should my acquisition process look like. What kind of marketing people do I need to hire? What kind of marketing organization do I need to build? The same on the sales side, right? And this is a mistake we see so often happening where then they build an organization and then we come in and we see, hey, we need to completely restructure it. So we basically built a new operating system, but we still have the wrong people hired for the old system. So this is a very lengthy process then of optimization you have to go through.
And I think just to pick up on that, that's really, this is the go-to-market stage, right? So this is not, you have zero revenue, you have no customers yet. This is really the point where you have customers and you actually can figure out, oh, look, my ideal customer is probably more, let's just say this CFO guy that I just had a call with that is willing to pay 20K for this, rather than these two others that maybe were easier to convince. But yeah, after the second trial period, they stopped or whatever. So you start to see really in your data also who is loving your product, who wants to work with this product, is willing to spend money on it, and that's how you get to your ideal customer profile. And then this whole go-to-market, what Joel now talked about, is super important. So for Holycode, we now had to relearn that, right? So Joel and his team helped us as well to go through that again and figure out what's our ideal customer profile. We have so many different products at Holycode that are serving very different sort of clients. You cannot do all of that at the same time at once. So we started to create 3 brands now that target different ICPs, different ideal customer profiles with different offerings, to make sure that we can individualize it better. Yeah, that was one of the big revelations for me, was that we had the wrong go-to-market approach for the kind of clients we were looking for, right? We were going way too digital, even though what we should have been doing was much more an account-based marketing or sales, where we really go and try to foster these relationships with certain accounts and make sure that we can grow them and that we can get into them, rather than trying to do it via marketing sort of product-led growth, which comes from the past experience that I had. Bexio, Movu, all digital platforms, all relatively low revenues. So everything there was more or less product-led. It was digital marketing, Google Ads, these sort of things. So you have to be aware that every business can be very different in these sort of, go-to-market approaches. And this is the second half, basically more or less, of scaling. Is you do some revenue, you know your customers, and now it's about how you scale that in the go-to-market. But the first part is, and Joel also said that before, is really product market fit. And there's a good, you can do it with Picora, but there's also just free to use the the product market fit survey that you can send your clients. If you Google it, you'll figure it out. It's a 4-question survey that will help you a lot to figure out where you're actually hitting it already, or how far off you still are, and what you need to do to improve it to get there. So I think these are really, Joel said it very early in the beginning, but these are the 2 main things that you need to look out for. First, get product market fit, get above this 40% happiness of the clients, make sure you understand who are the clients that are using your tool, why are those the ideal customer profiles, how can you get to them, and then build the go-to-market based on that. I think that's, yeah, it sounds easy. I've never done this in such a strategical way as we've done it now with Picora the last 10 years in every company, which is figured it out along the way somehow. And I think we could have saved a lot of resources if we had done it properly. I don't want this to be a sales pitch for Picora, but I can tell you, yeah, we learned a lot in the last 6 months based on this.
Joel, I'm curious. There's two things I would like to also touch upon. One is the CRM. You mentioned that sort of in a phrase, setting up the CRM system, and I think that is something that a lot of startups struggle, or it's like, what do I actually need? How do I set it up? And I think this is a huge, it's a huge topic. I mean, even for the Swiss Startup Association, it's a big topic. How do you do it? How do you set it up? What is important what are the key things that you recommend to look at when you start on that journey?
Yeah, that's quite an important topic that we get a lot of those questions lately. It's actually growing quite a lot as well. So I have a straightforward answer for the B2B people here, and not that straightforward answer for the B2C people here. But in B2B, the world is rather simple, right? If you're in B2B, the main options you have to go for is Salesforce, HubSpot, and then a small minority platforms like Pipedrive and other stuff. And if you're not already a millionaire or a very big company, you can probably not afford Salesforce. That will come later. And I would anyways not recommend you to go into this direction because it just comes with huge costs and huge setup. And it's not very intuitive for like a young startup. The answer is definitely go with HubSpot, right? This is what I can recommend from the deepest of my heart. It's not as, cheap as other tools, like Pipedrive might be cheaper, but if you invest into any kind of like simpler or cheaper CRM, then sooner or later you need to make a switch. You need to make a switch to another CRM. We get that quite often, and that's a pain, right? That's a big, big pain. We're gonna spend big, big bucks to do that, and we want to avoid that. So if you're a B2B company, check out HubSpot. There's a freemium version. There is a first tier, which is also very low cost. If you want to do anything towards automation, you need to have a pro version that it gets more expensive. There's discounts. So there's HubSpot for startups. Depending what kind of investors you have in the background, you get up to 90% discount. So that's pretty cool. So that's just in terms of the options. I'm going to talk about implementation a little bit later, but now let's switch to the B2C side. If you're in B2C, things a little bit more complex, right? Because depending if you're like a e-commerce company, D2C, or some B2C app, the world looks completely different. Very often, we see B2C companies that are exactly neglecting on the investment of a CRM. They're like asking themselves, well, why do I need that, right? I mean, I have my online shop or something else, and I have an email marketing tool that's quite okay, right? But then when we ask them, so how do you re-engage with your customers? How do you do cross-selling? How do you do upselling? How do you build retention campaigns? Then like, oh, well, we cannot really do that, right? And so within the B2C space, this is very, very important. So there are different tools, for example, like Klaviyo is doing a really good job here, where you want to make sure that you also have a system in place where on one hand, you can really track all the people that are coming into your direction that are not just purchasing, but interested in purchasing something. Then you can lead nurture them until they buy something. And then you want to have all the demographic data as well as the behavioral data of those customers in your CRM, because this then allows you to send, we call that trigger-based campaigns based on behavior, based on the season or whatsoever, which are individualized on the user, not just generic newsletters, so they can actually re-engage with those people and do those upsells correctly. So when now it comes about the implementation, then I think on the B2C side, it's also easier to just get started with some of those tools. On the B2B side, I recommend you very straightforward, get a partner. Like get someone that knows how to set up a CRM. You can invest all the way from 5 to 30K into such a setup. It's highly recommended to do that, because if you don't, then things happen like happened to us at Beekeeper. We start with HubSpot as our marketing automation tool. At some point, we have Salesforce as well. We have 2 tools. It's a big mess. People come, people go. And at some point, we invest around 40,000, 50,000 Swiss francs just to clean up the entire mess that has been built over the past years. So such a cleanup investment you can actually avoid by just investing into a solid implementation with a partner in the beginning. I can lash out even more on that, why in the details, but I think it's going too deep. But overall, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think it's also super important that once this implementation is done, especially if it has cost you a bit of money, you need to be super diligent with your team on using the system the right way, because it's not completely automated. Everything is going to work by itself. You need people to really use flag the data properly, use the system in the right way. So there's still some work that has to be done, and this, especially on the sales side, that's sometimes really stressful, and they don't necessarily see the benefits of it really quickly. But you need to have a really good eye on this, because otherwise, even with the best setup, 2 weeks or 2 months down the road, it will be so messy again that you've just wasted this money. So yeah, that's really important to do that properly. To look at the data every 2-3 days and tell people if something's not good, and really train everyone to use it in the same way, or to use it in the right way, because otherwise even the best CRM or the best sales tool will not help you down the road.
in terms of people, the sales team as such, do you also experience a change in that, Joel? I think, or assuming, you know, that from a very small company to a bigger company, you need to train sales staff, you need to hire new staff, you need to install the processes. What are your experiences or recommendations there?
So it goes a little bit in line with what we touched on before as well, right? So we're talking about this topic means we're in the go-to-market stage again, right? So we're hiring our first salespeople, or we're just adding more. That means we have a certain sales process already installed that has been developed by the founders. Now, the founders, they know the company really, really well, and everything that works and everything that does not work. So mostly they just kind of wing it and don't even have a process, but just they have it somehow in the blood on how to sell, or at least they believe they have it, right? So what's the first thing that needs to happen? And basically, I'm also talking about myself going through the exactly same phase right now, right? That you need to lay down the sales process. And again, here, what's your ideal customer profile? What's your deal size? According to the deal size, I know then how should my sales pipeline look like? Because according to the deal size, the sales process can look completely different. So you lay down that sales process, you define it, you need to train the methodology behind, and then you need to operationalize all of that in your CRM, right? So the CRM, a good CRM, is a tool that actually supports you in the sales process, right? Back in the days, CRMs were not more than just a data storage tool. So you would basically do your work as a marketing and a salesperson, and you're like, oh, I need to go and log that crap in the CRM. A good CRM these days supports you in the very action, right? So they basically give you value while getting information from you. And you need to operationally lay that down in your CRM so then the salespeople can run that process easily, right? And only if you have that, you can also expect that you can hire new salespeople successfully and then actually bring them into the company. And then between 3 to maybe 4 or 5 months, they should be ramped up and already producing new revenue, right? But you need to have the playbook that you can train them on, and it needs to be a playbook where you know that it works so that you can train them on, right? If we then go in to hire more people, we're then starting more like about talking to build kind of like a sales cockpit in a way, a training school on how to ramp up new sales more quickly. But that's again a topic for later stage, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think one important part that maybe we haven't touched on here enough is sales versus marketing. What do you do first, right? In some cases, this doesn't really matter because it's both at the same time. But to simplify it, do you need more leads first so that the salesperson makes sense to work off these leads and convert them? Or do you have the leads already and you just need a salesperson now that is able to really convert them in the right way? Can you do that both with the same person, or does this need to be very different sort of profiles? I think this is something that is really important to ask yourself. So for example, we at Holycode made the mistake last year to first hire salespeople and then figured out, well, the pipeline is still empty. If you hire salespeople, you can send them out to go and try and build their own pipeline. That's fine, but you're just not going to get the same sort of revenue out of that in our business case, because you need to first create the leads for them, right? And for example, at Bexu, it was the other problem, the other way around. They had so many leads and just not enough salespeople to work them off, to convert them into paying customers in the beginning. So that's something, and it can change throughout phases, that's clear, but be very mindful about where you need to invest first and what to hire first. Are you more on the convert the leads I have into paying customers, or are you more on the I don't have enough leads, I need leads, and figure out what kind of profile it is that you need to have first? Because everything else depends on that first hire.
Yeah, that's a very good input. Thanks for bringing that up, Laura. What I can add on that is, if you're in this very situation and you ask yourself, what should be my first or my next hire, more in the direction of marketing and sales, I would say go with what Laura just said, right? I mean, the demand should be there before you hire sales. If you just hire sales and then you have those kind of like single warriors that need to build their own pipeline, it's not very efficient. They usually would also work very opportunistic, meaning they don't follow your ICP structure. Like all of that go-to-market work, which is very important, is forgotten very quickly because they're just hungry to get some more leads, right? The other thing is also think about your own skill, like being the founder or the leadership team, you know, where is your skill? Are you rather on the marketing side or are you rather on the sales side, and then complement that? But that really only counts for your first couple hires to complement the team. After that, it's definitely demand needs to come before you hire sales.
That's an interesting point, and I thought it's hard to find the balance and to recognize probably as well, to have that feeling like, where do I really stand? I think in this busy entrepreneurial life, you sometimes don't see the trees because you're standing in the woods and everything is going on and you're juggling all these balls. So, and on top of that, I wanted to, do you have any advice? Because I'm sure that many of these founders are also looking for funds at the same time. So how do you handle that in parallel? Do you have any recommendation when, and also, do you have any lessons learned from failures that you can share, where you say, this had happened and I would definitely not recommend doing this, or can you share any examples?
So to the first part, in the sense of how do you also balance having to raise funds? I mean, not everybody has to, right? Some companies will be bootstrapped, and I think we're currently in times where it makes a lot of sense to try and stay bootstrapped for as long as you can. So 2 years ago, everyone was like, cheap money, go for it. Yeah. Now it's at the moment, the longer you can bootstrap, probably the better. It's not always the case, but as a generalistic rule, I would say so. If you need to go for investors, just be aware it's going to absorb an more enormous amount of time from you, and it will defocus you a lot from what you're doing on the business side, right? So it's all about trying also there to be efficient, and to having the, let's say, the ICP, the ideal customer profile, the ideal investor profile probably as well, and figuring out who are the ones that you should go to. So what we did at Mobile back then was I created a short list of around, well, it's probably a long list of around 80 people that I found on LinkedIn that were either from the moving industry, were investors that were investing into the home ecosystem topic, or into marketplaces. Everything else I left aside, and then tried to rank them by who are the ones I really want to go for. And then I started at the other end of the list. So I started reaching out to them, refining the approach on how I reached out to them, so that by the time that I got to the ones that I really wanted to get in touch with, my pitch was quite solid. I knew what I was saying. I've trained on people that maybe are not that relevant for me, right? So take some time to do that, because if you go for the investor you really want to have and you F up the sales pitch, yeah, that was your one chance. You blew it. So I think that's really important. Have a clear understanding of who you're going for. Start testing on the less important ones until you feel comfortable, and then attack the bigger ones as soon as possible. And the other thing is, be aware that investors usually don't say, you're cool, I'm going to invest. Yes, let's go. Usually they want to accompany you for 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer. They want to get regular updates. I think 8 out of 10 startups don't even do that still. So give them time. So at Mobile, for example, I knew potential buyers or potential investors. And from day one, we went to them, had a coffee, asked them for their feedback on our business model, how we're approaching things. We would give them an update every couple of weeks on how the business is going, what pivotal changes we have done, what of their feedbacks we've implemented and what we didn't implement, just to show them that we really listened to what they were saying. And then over 6 to 12 months, we started building a relationship where they said, hey, this guy is always delivering reports, even though we're not invested. When I give him a feedback, I even get an update on whether he was or they were implementing it or not. So that started to build quite a good relationship with some of them. And then you can also see very early on who of them is even opening your email, who of them is even, replying to it. And that gives you a quite good understanding of who to focus on going forward. And that helped us a lot. But yeah, it's not easy. It's very difficult at the moment to get good investors on board. So it is a hassle. Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. What I can share here, we're at Picora, we're quite in contact with a lot of VCs because we work with them together as partners. And of course, also ask them all the time, how do they see the market develop, right? And the interesting thing is, the money is still here. I mean, the money did not disappear, right? It went somewhere. But what shifted is that VC started more, doubling down on their existing portfolio, and especially companies which are close to profitability or which are already profitable, right? The early stage funding was basically not cracking down for quite a while, but it still happened now by mid 2023. So also that got shorter, and the rule there is just focus on really generating revenues as quickly as possible, right? So the big time of the unicorns, the billion-dollar valuation companies that are not profitable, this is over. The new cool thing is the centaurs. So companies that are somewhere valued around 100 million, but they are profitable and making good revenues, right? So this is like apparently the new shit among the VCs. What does it mean for you? Yeah, if you can bootstrap, if you can do that, try it, because it's also the fastest way to actually get funding, by showing good numbers, good revenue, and then actually convincing investors through that. I think way more I don't need to add here. Money's still there. The game just got more difficult, and you can win it by actually showing that you can produce revenues as quickly as possible.
Yeah, fully agree. Yesterday I was at the NOAA conference, and I saw a couple of startups that have been trying to raise for 2 years now, and now they're approaching 1 million in ARR, 3 of those startups, and suddenly investor interest starts picking up because they can show the traction, right? The same guys that a year ago said, yeah, you're not in the focus of we already have too many companies in this space, you're not in the focus area of us. Now suddenly they say, let's have a look at it. Because the FOMO comes in at some point if you start showing traction. So that's really the main thing. Yeah.
So coming back to the lessons learned and examples, Joel, do you have any good examples or also bad examples, like how to and how not to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I have a bazillion of those because we work with over 100 startups in the past 3 years, but I rather focus on the ones at Picora because we're more actually exactly in this stage as well, just exiting the go-to-market stage by now. And I think from all the, detailed things I can mention and just stay high level. And although, I mean, we have quite some experience in building companies this way, we also do mistakes ourselves, right? And the thing that annoys me most is that one of the important recommendations we always give to companies is when it's about creating new traction, creating this revenue, trying out new challenges, track your actions. You need to make sure that every initiative, experiment, or whatever you do, that you track this, you really measure what's the result that actually came out of this. Because what happens if you don't do that is you start with one initiative, it could be webinars, it could be outbound sales, it can be digital ads and whatsoever. It works for a while, then it stops working for a while. And then 2 years later, you're sitting there and you're like, hey, why is our marketing engine not properly working, or why is it no longer working again? And then you sit down with the team and they come up with ideas and you're like, dude, that's the same ideas we were talking 2 years ago. Like, what happened, right? So this is slowing you down. It's very important that you learn as quickly as possible. So with every initiative you do, really document what you're doing, write down what the results are, and then also write down what the conclusion out of this has been, because that saves you so much time from running in circles that will actually help you to develop the business into the same direction. So it's a very high level answer, but that's the most important learning for me to do that more thoroughly.
And when you also asked about the investor side before, and I think there, one of my key learnings is know your numbers, right? I mean, you need to create traction first, as we said, but once you do, and you go pitch to investors, you need to be solid as possible on your numbers, on your customer acquisition costs, your customer lifetime values, your unit economics, your outlook for the next year, the next 2 years. You need to, I don't know, read that for 5 hours straight all the time so that you can spit it out straight away without having to look at it again. Why am I saying that? Because I didn't do it right. I was pitching once at an investor summit somewhere, and Peter Schippach was there before me, which is a quite famous investor here in Switzerland. And he was starting his new venture back then called Swiss Commerce, which is huge by now. He was on stage. He made his presentation, which was obviously great. And then the Q&A started. And he had bulletproof answers to everything. And then I came on stage. I think my pitch was good. Then they started asking me about unit economics and these sort of things. And I had zero answers. And I looked like the biggest douche ever. And the investors that we already had told me after it's long, look, you're not going to convince a single person in the room like this, even though we know that this is a case that should be invested into right now. But yeah, nobody was interested afterwards, simply because I did not know my numbers. And that's, I think, one of the first red flags that comes up with investors is if they feel like you don't know the unit economics or the revenue numbers and these sort of things on your company. So you always need to be prepared for that.
Joel, I'm curious about, we were also touching on the topic of customer retention, and obviously customer success is also a big topic, and what happens after the sales. Do you want to share a few words about how you work with startups with regards to customer success and what they should be doing, and absolutely must not forget kind of topics?
It's actually a very good point, and something I was wondering about a lot over the past year, because when also Corona hit and then the market downturn, etc., you would read like reports from Y Combinator and other leaders in the market, and among the top 3 things they would recommend to you is focus on your existing customers. Right. So focus on retention, upselling, cross-selling, reselling. That's really one of the most important things. Now, in parallel, we were actually launching a full-scale customer success program with a customer success expert that worked at Dropbox before, and it completely, did not really help. No one was interested. People still wanted like sales. I only invest my money in sales. And we're like, okay, that's somehow interesting, right? So I think there's a big misconception in the market about that people still think I need to invest so much top of the funnel, where I should invest way more on the existing clients. And also when it's about retention, it's a different game when it comes to B2B and B2C, right? In B2C, you need to develop all the systems first. We talked about this, the CRM, etc. So you can do that. Just as a rule of thumb, I mean, the entire investment you do into acquiring a client and the first purchase you get, this is mostly not nearly 50% or even lower, like way lower than the lifetime value you can get out of this person, right? So this is just to show you how important it is to develop those systems, because you can get up to 4 times more than what you actually get within the first sales. Within B2B, it's a different story, right? And we can imagine it a little bit the way I explained sales before. So the same way that we start with the deal size in sales and then develop the right sales process to it to know how to sell, we also start with like the deal size within customer success to understand what's the entire onboarding and delivery and customer success framework we need to apply for that kind of account and deal size so that we can make them successful. So customer success and upselling, reselling does not start at the point where, oh, they should purchase new licenses. It starts in the very beginning, right? Where you have a customer success framework. During the onboarding, you start doing that. You define the first couple goals of going through the onboarding phase and what happens after. And this is very important when we talk about larger accounts, right? To do that right, because this is what ultimately leads to your upsell. But again, here, be specific about the deal size and then develop the right framework. And then from there, you can take that.
I would like to open the floor now to the participants. This is your chance to ask your questions to Laurent and Joel. Please just open your mics and your camera if you wish, and go ahead, or ask them in the chat in the...
I have a question, and it's a bit like in the earlier phase, right? So it's something you touched a bit upon, which is like, how do I know I'm ready to go to market, right? Like what I would say, like, what is the minimum that I need to have, right? To know, okay, now it's time to market, sales, and all of that.
Good question. Laura, you want to jump on that? Because you mentioned the PMF survey before just yourself.
Yeah, I can say a couple of words and you correct me where I'm wrong or not right. So I think the best thing you can do is really this product market fit survey. That's a super easy tool to use, where you just ask your customers 4 questions. Basically, How would you feel if you cannot use this product anymore? What is it doing for you? Who else should be using it, and what are you missing, right? And this will give you a lot of insights. And then there's a score. I think it's around 40%, but Joel will know better than me. If 40% of participants say they would be really unhappy if they could not use your tool anymore or your service anymore, you know you've hit product market fit, right? And you will have to do it a couple of times, and it will evolve over time. But this is a really good way of getting feedback on why they like your tool, who they think would be a good customer for you, and at the same time, what you should improve. And B, to really understand, okay, I think I found my segment, my ideal customer profile that I can now start figuring out how to scale into that segment. And it's such an easy tool, like I didn't even know that before Picora. We never used it. We just by chance happened to do something similar by ourselves, which helped us to get there. And setting this up cost me half an hour. And then looking at the results took me 2 hours, and it helped a lot to figure out where you need to go. So I think this is a super easy way. If you're having enough clients to do that, then you know the answer. You probably first need to get enough clients or—
How many? What's the minimum of clients I need to have that fill in the survey? Just roughly, what would you say?
Well, Joel can say more about that. Once they told me you need to have around 40 answers so that you can actually count it. But okay. Joel probably knows better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a black or white question or answer, Noemi, right? I mean, depending again here, if you're like in very big deal sizes, you might have only 10 customers, but already making more than $1 million, right?
Yeah.
If you're smaller, you might have 10 customers and you're not even making a buck or almost nothing. So imagine a situation you're in, just to take a step back again, right? Your goal is to understand what level of product market fit do you have. Is it already the right time to now invest into acquiring new customers and sell them the product the way we have? Or do we first need to make the product better before we invest into selling it more? This is basically the question you need to ask to change from the product market fit stage to the go-to-market stage. Of course, also, if you enter go-to-market, you're still going to work on your product as always. You're going to make it better, but you want to make sure you have a certain degree of product market fit there so that all this investment you do into winning new people are not lost at the bottom again. So you want to have a cup that you can fill with water, and if the cup has holes inside and you lose everything, this is not what you want to do, right? So that's disaster. Laura was perfectly right. The product market fit survey by Sean Ellis is a really easy and handy tool on how you can measure your product market fit. They say you need to have around 40 replies so that you can really draw any kind of conclusions out of this. But even if you have lower, start doing it. It's the right framework. The second framework is a quantitative framework, and that's retention analysis. And that's really the ultimate proof for product market fit. So if you have any kind of type of business that sells, subscription on a monthly plan or longer, etc., retention analysis is what you want to prove at the end. And what we do there is we take a look at our cohorts. So out of the, let's say, 100 people that started using your product on day 0, how many are still there after, 10 days, 30 days, 50 days, 60 days, and so on and so forth, depending on the span of your product. And what we want to see is that this curve, this always drops in the beginning, but we want to see how this flattens out. It needs to become flat at some point. It's basically the hockey stick. And this is the ultimate proof for product market fit. If you're talking to investors that know what they're speaking about, they're rather going to invest in a company that can prove with those two tools that they have product market fit, but almost make no revenue, than a business that makes revenue but has a declining curve and a very poor degree of product market fit.
But if you have, for example, yearly fees, right, where you have to wait till the end of the year to see who drops out and who stays, right? So then retention is a little bit more difficult to add to your regular reporting, right?
Yes,
how do you go about that?
So this is the funny thing, right? If I say yearly licenses, and they stop after a year, that's not really to do with retention, it's more churn. Because if they stop after a year, you already lost them somewhere before, right? So we need to split like the payment of the licenses from the behavior, right? So even if they pay a license fee, I mean, they're using your product throughout the year, and you want to be able to measure that. I would check if they're
using it, right? So I would see the people that paid for 1 year, how many are still using the tool after 2 months, 3 months? Okay, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions? No, I have a question. So, Joel, what challenges should startup anticipate as they aim to sustain and surpass the 1 million ARR milestone? So, going beyond that, what would you what happens then?
Okay, yeah, good question. I can give a little insight into that. I actually saw there is a question from Walter in the chat, which I'm going to get back to you as well, Walter. So I keep it short with yours, Regula, and then I dive into
Go first with Walter, and then
okay. Then we do that. So Walter is asking, which tool do you recommend for knowledge sharing, especially for the tracking of past initiatives you mentioned before? So there are specific, like, we're talking about growth hacking experiments, right? If you want to do that really professionally, there are various different tools you can buy and invest to do that. If it's really more about the tracking aspect of the different initiatives I have done, I love to work with Notion, because just with the setup of having HubSpot as a CRM and then Notion as my single source of truth, I can do all kind of like project management in there. I can do all the tracking, the planning, the strategy. I can easily build any kind of Kanban boards I need to then actually track experiments and make notes, right? So it's a very easy tool to go for. Of course, you can also use Trello and they have there a Kanban board where you basically build an experiment pipeline. But generally speaking, once we run such initiatives or experiments, what we do is building such a Kanban board with an experiment pipeline, right? Where you have basically on the left, experiment ideas, experiment prioritized, scoped, defined, in implementation, and so on and so forth. On the very right side, you have a column which is called history, and that's very important, that you have a tool where all the experiments that have been conducted are logged, which can be easily retrieved and also with a search function looked upon, so that you can really understand what has been done and what not. If you're more tech company, Jira is also a perfect tool to do that. So on Beekeeper, I built all of that in Jira, which is amazing also to do that.
And I think when you're early stage still, you can even do it just with a spreadsheet if you know how to manage it well, and not everybody is going, to mess with it. You can easily build it out in a spreadsheet, because that also helps you to look at the performance directly next to each other, rather than having to switch back and forth from different pages and making assumptions there. But yeah, as you grow bigger, probably Notion or Jira would be a better, or maybe Confluence, depending on what you want to do, would be a better solution. But yeah, in the early beginnings, I would not spend money. Just try using Trello for the experiment pipeline and the spreadsheet where you really track on different things, like outbound event, outbound calls, all the different things you did on the same sort of KPIs and costs. That works well enough.
Any other questions? I'd like the participant questions to be answered first before my own. Anyone else? No? In that case, Joel, what are the challenges to expect once you surpass the 1 million?
Okay, so let's imagine again where we are right now, right? So we're in the go-to-market stage. We built all those foundations. We hired our first salespeople, marketing people, operation strategy, and so on and so forth. And we enter now the scaling stage. So the game of what you do as a founder changes very much. And Laura has a lot of experience there, right? But it's less about you now teaching others and implementing the system, switching everything more into the resource allocation game, right? So as a founder now, you need to think, okay, where do I allocate the limited resources we have as a company? What kind of people do I put in what kind of positions so that I can scale this, right? The company will not scale by you doing any kind of hero actions or fixing whatnot, right? You need to put the right people in the right places. So this is what the game is about. And to do that, we need to completely leave the field of making gut feel decisions. So it's all becomes about data, because data supports us in our decision making, right? And there you definitely want to start with the entire acquisition data tracking to just understand what's actually going on, but that goes into individual sales performance, marketing performance, and so on and so forth. So data becomes more and more important because it supports you in the decision making. I could go for hours what kind of data models you need to build, but I saw there's another question in the chat.
Yeah, that's then for the next one when we get there, Joel, right? So
Yes.
what are the best, Natalia, what are the best early stage marketing strategies for a startup to find market fit and build a waiting list before launching, starting building community, blogging, B2C global footprint?
Mm-hmm. Laurent, should I continue here, or
I can say a couple of sentences and then I'll give it to the expert. So from the experience that I've made, this can be very different depending on the type of business you're in, the ticket sizes, as we said before, or like the revenue sizes of each client that you're going to make. So just anecdotal, at Mobile, we just built a landing page. We spent a couple of $100 on Google Ads to get people to sign up, put their email address there. That's it. At Clank, we did something similar, and then it was basically a smoke test. So you said sign up, and then we said, sorry, it's not ready. We'll inform you once it is ready. So yeah, those are two of those examples. Then there's other parts where you try to build a community. So you can go to a Reddit group or forum and just figure out for your niche, is there some forum where a lot of people are debating about these sort of things, and try to become a voice that is heard in there, and try to build a following there, and really build that, as you said, this community in order to get from them what you should be building, or to get some early stage traction there. I can recommend Greg Eisenberg on LinkedIn. I'll repeat it, Greg Eisenberg. He's a US founder that sold 2 or 3 companies already, and he's super big on community. He says the new way of building B2C companies is by building the community first, then figuring out with the community what's the product that they're actually in need of. And once you build the product, you already have your customers, because it's your community that you're going to sell it to. So I think for certain cases, not all of them, but for certain cases, this is a fantastic playbook. So I can only recommend to read up on that, because you stated here, building communities, blogging, etc. But there's a lot of different ways, depends a bit on your model. Joel?
Yeah, I second that, right? So I think there's not one right or wrong channel you can use, but there's rather a method that is more right than another. And what we get from early stage companies sometimes, like very early stage companies, is they come and they say, so hey, I have this product here, but I need customers, and I don't even have a waiting list or anything else. And then I'm like, how the hell did you build that product if you don't have a waiting list from all the users tests which you're supposed to have done, right? So usually when you build a company, I mean, you start with defining the market, then you start by defining the underserved needs. And for that, you need to do market research, and you need to conduct user interviews, right? And those user interviews, you can find those people in Facebook groups and other kind of stuff, so that you can actually conduct interviews with those people. Out of these interviews, then the solution is created, and basically step by step, you build up the list of the early adopters, the people that might be interested into you, right? Once you have this, then you actually start doing demand tests, which is related to quantitative tests, meaning display ads, testing to what kind of value proposition people react. And from there, you win new people to your waiting list. So at the point where you actually have a product which you were able to release, you should already have built a waiting list of, I don't know, 100, 200 people out of all the testing you did before, right? If this is not the case, then you really need to start creating traction, and there is no right or wrong answer, right? You need to understand, again, what is your ideal customer profile? What's the value you give to them? Who are they? Where are they? And then choose what is the right platform to advertise or to build a community in, or whatsoever, depending on who they are and where they operate.
All right. Thank you so much, Joel. I think we've reached now 1 o'clock already. And I'd like to wrap up the webinar on time, but I'll definitely make sure that everyone gets the information, and please feel free to connect with Joel and Laurent on LinkedIn. We'll also send everything in a follow-up email, including the link you provided, as well as the Greg Eisenberg LinkedIn profile, to make sure that everyone follows that. So thank you so much, everyone. and especially Laurent and Joël for this insights. That was very helpful, and lots of learnings. And I guess we could go on for quite a while talking about this. We've only really went knee deep, I'd say. I'd like to share with you the next webinar coming up in just roughly a month, which is going to be about how to get from a first prototype to your MVP or POC platform, again with Laurent and his co-founder Nenad and Louis Witwer from Carvolution. Make sure you sign up for that one. And I think it's, again, it's been a very, very good discussion, and I'm already looking forward to the next one of the series. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and happy holidays, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Danke. See you, everyone. Tschüss.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.